Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to our information session here today. Thank you for joining us. Our session today is for businesses on the Sunshine Coast about our current water supply situation. My name is Aidan Buckley. I work as the Manager of Communications and Engagement at the Sunshine Coast Regional District, and I'll be helping to facilitate our information session here this morning. I want to start by acknowledging that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located on the land of the Sechelt and Squamish First Nations. So this morning, we're going to be hearing more about water supply for the Chapman water system, challenges associated with our supply, the state of local emergency, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, that's still in place, and the help that we need from the business community as we look to secure our water supply into the winter. Our session this morning is also available on YouTube, the SCRD's YouTube channel. So if you have any colleagues or any other folks in the business community who may not have been available to attend this morning's event, but would still like to see it and learn a little bit more about what we talked about, feel free to share that link, which will be available once the session has concluded today. So just some housekeeping here for us. There's 3 ways to ask a question on this session itself. On the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little hand there. You can raise the hand and I can promote you into the meeting to ask the question yourself. You can also use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen too to ask questions, and then the chat function is also there as well. I'd ask that if you are going to ask a question, if you try and put them in the Q&A, that'd be much appreciated. I'll get a couple of tabs open here, so it'll help me keep track of everything that's going on. So you can see some folks here on the screen here beside me, and I'm just going to introduce you through who we have with us. Today's session is in coordination with Scredo. And representing Scredo here today, we have Colin Stansfield, who's the Executive Director of Scredo. We also have Yaro Dertina, who's the Small Business Programs Manager at Scredo. And with the Sunshine Coast Regional District, we've got Remco Rosenboom, who's our General Manager of Infrastructure Services and is also the Director of our Emergency Operations Centre, which you'll be learning more about here as we continue. So Remco, I'm going to invite you to start sharing your screen when you have a moment. And I don't know, Colin, I didn't ask you to say anything here to start, or I haven't prepped you to say anything, but I'm not too sure if you want to add anything just before Remco starts off here.
No, just a word of thanks to the SCRD for reaching out and making this direct line of communication with the business community. I know that we have very community-minded businesses here in the region and full of great creative solutions. So better understanding the challenges that we're facing will probably lead to, I'm sure, better ways of working forward. So appreciate being here. Thank you.
For sure. Thanks, Colin. Okay, Remco, when you're ready to go there, feel free to share. And I think our presentation is going to be about 10 or so minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions after it. But feel free to ask questions as we go. I'll keep track. And yeah, when you're ready, Remco.
Okay. Thanks, Aidan. I'll start the slide deck. Let's see if it works. Okay, is everybody able? Is this viewing? Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Perfect.
So, as indicated, I'm very pleased that I'm able to connect here with people in the business side of our community, because I fully realize that this is challenging times for everybody in the community, not only, and we're all residents of the community, but I know you're also playing a valued role in that, in providing services to the community. So, the first thing is this morning's session, I will give an outline for current water supply situation, give a quick brief overview what is currently being done to continue to provide water to the community, what is the role of business in terms of water demand. I'll touch on the orders that have been in place and are in place under the local state of emergency that's currently still in place. And there's lots of time for questions. And I'll provide the answer. I'll try to provide the answers as much as I can. So it's not uncommon for the SCRD, as everybody's aware, that we have drought situations. This year started off actually very wet in June. I was a happy camper, but because it was raining, from a drought scenario, from a residential perspective, I was less happy, but from a drought scenario perspective, I was like, okay, I'm happy with rain. And then it started to stop raining in July, and there we are. So in late August, we had to call stage 4 water conservation regulations. In September, it was still not raining a lot, so we realized that we might be in a situation where we need to activate our emergency operations center. The function of an emergency operations center is to really coordinate the effort. And in this case, it's not only our effort, but it also allows for better communication with other jurisdictions, the province, and get their support as well. The situation got so dire that mid-October, we recommended that a state of local emergency would be declared, and the responsible elected officials agreed with that. So mid-October, a state of a local emergency was declared, and that's still in place. And that provides us with additional powers, authorities to regulate water and to also source supplies. So both those powers, the powers we received under state of local emergency, as well as the fact that we have an operations center, an emergency operations center in place, we really need both of them to continue to provide water to the community. So to put things into perspective, you might have seen in media communications earlier, we are drawing from Chapman Lake and Edwards Lake during the summer months, and we draw the lakes down a significant amount. And this year, Chapman Lake, and both these pictures are from Chapman Lake, we draw down 5 meters, which is the furthest we've ever drawn down. But usually at the end of the summer, we have the rains in September, they fill up again, and we can take, and actually our dams there will overflow, and we can take the overflow and use that for community water supply. Picture on the left is the situation last year when we lifted stage 4 restrictions. In the back, you see the lake, and there's an outlet channel to the dam, and this picture is taken from our dam infrastructure at Chapman Lake. Picture on the right is November 1st this year, and you see snow on the ground. Since it has there was more snow, so the snow levels are higher than they are in this picture, and you see that we're still about 2.5 meters below the level on the left picture. So the lakes are currently not full, and they're not overflowing. So that's really one of the factors that's really causing us to have less water in Chapman Creek, our primary water source. To clarify that as well, the picture on the left is mid-October this year, and all the area that's brown on this picture is actually used to be wet. So this is how far we draw down the water. This is at -5 meters. And you can see that a significant amount of area is wet. And the picture on the right, you can see the lake in the background on November 7th, and it's already starting to freeze up. So it's just an indicator that the lakes, we cannot rely on the lakes as a water source at this point in time. It's all the water that we take from Chapman Creek, our primary water source, is coming from the watershed below the lakes. And that watershed has not filled up significantly over the last several months. This is an indicator, this graph depicts the amount of water we received over the last several months. As I indicated, in early July, we still had a good amount of rain, but July 7th, I think, was the last heavy rainfall, and then it stopped for the rest of July. August, several millimeters. September, only several millimeters. October, yes, we had some rain events, but as you can see here, it's still 50% or just over 50% of what the average rainfall in October. And November to date has been dry for the last several weeks. So there's a lot of rain to fall to even make the average amount for November, let alone to compensate for anything we had to date. So what this results in is that the Chapman watershed is really dry. And when I talk about a watershed, that's the entire area that feeds, that when the rain drops, when the rain falls in a specific area and it flows to Chapman Creek, And then we can take it at our treatment plant at lower elevation, just above Field Road. Then we can take it and feed it to a treatment plant and provide it to the community. But all the soil in that watershed is bone dry. So what happens is, I think it's the same as with a house plant you have. If you've forgotten to water your plant for a long time and you give it water, the first amount of water would just go off the surface. It's not even infiltrating into it. And so what we currently are seeing is that the top layers of the soil is a little bit wet, but below that it's still very dry. So there is not a lot of water that the soil can provide to the creek flows when it's not raining. The sponge, as I say, the sponge it's still half empty or more than half empty. So if you more water needs to be added to the sponge to actually start releasing water to the creek, so that we can take it for the community for the rest of the summer, the rest of the winter, I have to say now. And on top of that, we see with the current temperatures, the part of the water in our watershed is actually falling as snow or is freezing up. So that's even further limiting our ability to actually draw water from the creek, because the creek is just not producing the amount of water we need. In terms of our daily water use in the community, it has been low now for the last several weeks, which is good. It's currently below our target level of 8.5 million liters a day. We've been hovering between 7.7, 7.9, 7.6, which is good. And I'm happy to see that. And it really needs to stay at this level. And if you compare this to, for example, last winter, we were definitely above the 9 million liters. So it's very clear that there is a water conservation happening in the community, that there is an awareness within the community and response to the community to the fact that there is a state of local emergency in place and that our water supply is definitely at risk. And we need to keep it there. And the more we reduce our demand, the better. So what are the solutions we currently have in place? The town of Gibsons has a certain amount of water that they're currently not using, and that their own water supply is able to feed into the Chapman system. So our staff have been working with town of Gibson staff to, because there are some interconnections between our water systems, to see how we can maximize the use of their system. And that process is still ongoing, but we can definitely are able to get some water from town of Gibsons. We have you might be well aware that we've been working now for several years to develop our Church Road well field in the Granthams area. Even though the well field, we don't have all the parts yet to fully put that well field online to provide additional water to the system. We found a way to at least get some water from that well field into the system, and staff are actually today trying to optimize how we can best use that water. So as of today, town of Gibson's emergency water supply is online, and the Church Road well field most likely will go online as well as of today if everything works out well. We have two additional water sources that we're drawing, that we can draw water from. One is Cray Creek in the Tewanak area. We don't have proper treatment available at that location. So if we were to turn it on, if it's needed to be turned on anytime soon, it might require boil water advisory for the Tewanak and Sandhoek area. We're looking into an opportunity to get a mobile treatment unit to that site, so that we don't need a boil water advisory, but it's hard to get one of those treatment systems. So we're looking into options to expedite that. So if we were to need it prior to us actually getting a treatment system on site, we might need to put a boil water advisory in. And that's the same for Trout Lake. Trout Lake is a water source that used to be used for the Half Moon Bay community. We can use that again, but with the current regulations, it would require us to put a boil water advisory in for the entire area of Half Moon Bay and north of Francis Road. We currently have to release a certain amount of water. We have to keep a certain amount of water in the lower sections of Chapman Creek to protect fish species that are there, primarily salmon. That amount of water is called our environmental flow need, and we're working with the province and the federal government, federal agencies, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, to see if we can lower the amount of water that we have to keep in the creek, so we can draw more water for the community. There are still a lot of leaks in our community on people on private properties. On the residential side, but also there are still a lot of businesses with a leak. They all received a letter from us asking them to fix their leaks, and there's still a lot of work ongoing there. And we have orders under the state of local emergency in place to further restrict use. So the orders that are currently, we had an order in place between October 18th and November 1st. And that had a significant impact on the business community. Swimming pools were closed, including the public one, and Seashell, breweries, cideries were impacted, bottled water companies, cannabis, and businesses that are involved in transporting, processing, cleaning, and install and repair of concrete, cement, asphalt, gravel, and aggregate. So since November 10th, a more limited scope order is in place, which restrict the topping up of the filling and topping up of pools and hot tubs on the private side. So the pool in the public pool and Seashell is open. Non-medical cannabis production, processing, cleaning, and of asphalt concrete is in place. And the installation of maintenance of ice in the Sunshine Coast Arena was also prohibited under that order. However, yesterday, the Mayor of Seashell and the SCRD board chair decided that ice needed to be installed in the Sunshine Coast Arena. So they rescinded that part of this order. So the remaining part of the order are still in place. How can businesses help? In general, be mindful of your water use. If you have a leak, if you received a letter from us, please fix it. Please address it. Some of these leaks are leaking the same amount. Some of these leaks are so large that they're leaking the same amount of 100 households. So please address them, because it's wasting water, and we can't have that at this point in time. And if large leaks are not being fixed, we will follow up with, and we have the authority to shut off somebody's water supply. And we've done so in the past, and we're definitely, given the situation, we will continue to do so. So fix your leak. Scheduled maintenance that can be done later in this year or early next year, do it. If the water is not being used, if there's no need to use the water today, don't use it. Don't wash any vehicles or buildings. If you have, for your business purposes, have to do a lot of dishwashing or clothes washing, you run full loads. Turn off your taps when you're not in use, especially in kitchens. Provide drinking water only as and when needed. This is primarily for restaurants. And educate your employees. And if you have any suggestions on what we can do to help you in terms of materials, etc., just connect with us, and we can see what we can do to provide you in terms of materials for you to provide to your customers or to your own employees. There are still businesses that are using a lot of water just to run their appliances. I'm primarily talking here about flow-through chillers and other equipment that is using water 24/7 just to cool, primarily for cooling purposes. Those amounts are significant. So if you have one of those pieces of equipment, please see if you can reduce that amount, change it out, switch it. I think this is a good time to reconsider the use of those kind of flow-through equipment. And it all depends how the situation evolves in the next several months. But maybe it's a good time to prepare for backup plans for if we have to issue SOL, or maybe a boil water advisory for the area you have your business in. As indicated before, the watershed is currently dry. We see creek flows dropping to summer levels. There's freezing temperatures up there, so rainfall might fall snow, and we might be in this situation for significant of time, more months more than we are currently. It won't be a sprint. I think we're going to run a marathon here. At least we're preparing for one. So I think it's wise from a business continuity perspective if you do so as well. And I'm stop sharing my screen, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thanks so much, Remco. So we've already had a couple of questions come on in. I see there's a couple of participants who joined us before I had my spiel here this morning to start us off. So if you do have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, or you can add them to the chat, or stick up your hand there. You can hit the hand icon, the raise hand, and we can promote you into the meeting itself to ask the question. So questions right now primarily focused over at you here, Remco. We got Brian who says it looks like there's water and ice in the outlet channel leading to the dam and outlet valve. So that's obviously referring back to the picture which you showed earlier in your presentation. And why can't the valve be open to add water to Chapman Creek if necessary to maintain environmental flow and take water into our system?
Thank you. So we have to, staff are actually going up tomorrow to confirm how much water, because that picture was from earlier in November. So we're going up later this week to confirm if that ice is still there and how much of the channel is actually frozen. We have our a big valve there, and it's completely frozen over at the moment. So we actually have to see if we can manually even turn it open to release water. So normally during summer conditions, we can operate the valve remotely from our computer, cell phones, but now we would have to go up manually to release it. And I would have to temper the expectation. The amount of water that's there might provide us with several days of water supply to the community, not more, because the entire watershed behind it is frozen. So once the water is out of the lake, if we even can get it out, it's out. It won't recharge anytime soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. Angela, I see you've got your hand raised there, so I'm just going to promote you into the meeting here. So if you want to unmute, so we got Angela Croning here. I hope I'm pronouncing that okay. If you want to unmute there, you can go ahead and ask your question. I see you have unmuted, Angela. I'm not too sure if you're speaking yet or not, just so you know, we can't hear you right now. You know, I'll do, Angela. I'll just put you back into the meeting if you want to maybe see if you can fix your if you can fix the issue that you may have with your microphone there, and I'll just jump on to a couple more questions here that we have. So we've somebody asking about water meters, Remco, and when the water meter program will be implemented. I know that a lot of the staff right now who would be involved in that program have been involved in the drought response and the EOC and the state of local emergency. So I'll leave you to expand on that maybe a wee bit.
Yeah, so thank you. So we have currently water meters in place in all the rural areas, in all the electoral areas, and not in the district of Seychelles. So we're currently finalizing, as Aiden indicated. There's a lot of staff that would be working otherwise on the meter installation project are now currently working on make sure that our community has water at the moment. So, but we still have to hoping to get the the process started to get a contractor in place this fall so that we can get the first meters in the ground next year, early next year.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. We have another one here asking, do you foresee measures affecting restaurants, cafes in the next few months? And I guess that's those measures will be, I guess, orders under the state of local emergency.
I would not be able to say yes or no to that question because my work is more on a day-to-day basis than on a month-to-month basis. I'm looking more short term, but so it all depends on the situation. However, I know that restaurants they can provide water. They are using water in their kitchens, so I would definitely encourage you to at least see what you can do within your own restaurant to reduce the consumption. And the more you do, the more is done voluntarily, the less likelihood that there is that an order might be required.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thanks, Remco. And Colin and Yarrow, I guess we're just wondering about the types of supports that businesses may be able to access, through this time right now. Should they be subject to an order under the state of local emergency or anything along those lines? Just wondering if you can maybe provide a little bit of information on that.
Yeah, and so we're thank you for the question. We're in touch with our regional manager through the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. And that might seem like it's an odd ministry to be reaching into, but that division used to be inside of FLNRORD, Forest, Lands, Natural Operations and Resource Development, talking with them about exactly what does exist in situations of emergency. And a lot of that has only been planned out for things like fires and floods where there's too much water, or really sort of rethought during a period of a global pandemic. This is new. And so we have our regional manager on the call today. We're talking with her on a daily basis about how she can reach out into other ministries to make them aware of what's going on so that it's the appropriate types of support to assist businesses who are potentially having to close down. So much of what's been available so far. And please do reach out to Yarrow, who's on the call, and she can put you in touch with what does exist. Is a lot of kind of capacity building around, business continuity, which is good, but I'm not sure meets the needs of those businesses who have been affected through that first order and are still facing it. And so we recognize that perhaps it's not a best case right now and are working to come up with better options.
Great stuff. Thank you. We got Theresa here who's asking, does the SRD have a task force to work with those companies or homes with large leaks to fix as soon as possible? And then Theresa, I know you're asking about water metering, and I think Remco answered that a little bit earlier. So yeah, so Remco, just wondering about whether or not we've got some folks who are working with companies or homes with large leaks.
Yeah, we have dedicated staff that are reaching out to those businesses and residents. And reaching out means writing letters, phone calls, but also in-person visits to really bring home the message.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. We got a lot of great questions coming in. Thank you, everybody. Carolyn is asking Remco. She's saying that you've spoken of a couple of ideas there that could alleviate the water problem, like Great Creek, Trout Lake, Church Road. But then apparently you seem to follow up with more objections, which offset the ideas a wee bit. I think we're maybe just kind of opening up the potential issues with those water sources, right? So I don't know if you maybe want to provide a little bit more context on that, Remco.
I think what is relevant here is to acknowledge that the need for us to develop or to implement one of those options or multiple of those options is all dependent on how much rain we're getting and when we're getting it. Next week there is some rain in the forecast, so if that actually falls, we might be in a better situation for 1 or 2 weeks. But after that, we might be back into the situation where we're currently in, that we're back into summer drought scenarios. So a lot of these options they're untested. They've never been deployed before. So yes, there might be some pros and cons with all of these options. None of them are ideal, and they're all emergency options that if we can avoid to use them, we'll avoid it. But we work with what we have.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. Carolyn again is asking on behalf of her husband, Jeff White. asking under the current circumstances, when do we anticipate we'll run out of water? Which I know is something which came up during the summer months as well. Remco?
I can't say, even if I would like to say that I would like to. It all depends, as I indicated. If the rain falls that it's in the forecast for next week, we might be good for several weeks. If the current state of affairs continues, I don't know actually how dry the watershed is. How much water can we still get out of the watershed? And it all depends also on freezing levels. What we've seen is recently there was a cold spell where the freezing levels were well below zero here, or around zero here during the night, and we could immediately see the creek flows dropping as well, because a larger part of the watershed was freezing over. And 2 days ago we had a clear, very high, clear blue sky day, and we could see a little bump in the water flows, even a tiny, because of melting of snow and melting of soil. So it all depends on those kind of situations, on that. When are we going to run out of water? It's hard to say. Is there a risk? Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Remco. We have a question here about the Sunshine Coast Arena, asking whether or not it opened under private funding for the water. My understanding is no. We're utilizing Chapman Water, right, Remco, to fill the ice?
Yeah. So the board yesterday made a decision to start filling the ice, start filling the arena with ice from Chapman Water, and to look for alternative water sources to maintain the ice for the rest of the season. So it's to be determined if that additional water supply is available, if technically that actually can be used in the arena. And but from a water supply perspective, I really hope that alternative water supply is available as soon as possible, because I would like to keep as much as Chapman Water for residents and businesses, and not for ice making.
We have another question here from an anonymous attendee. They're asking, why have properties that have known to have had leaks not had their water turned off already, and have they been fine? Now, I do know that we did some water shut-offs, Remco, so I don't know if you want to maybe expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we've large leaks and water shut-offs is something that we've been working on during the year. It's not only now that we're doing it, but we really increased we really redirected some additional staff capacity on that. So I think we will continue to do that, but it's more, so we increased our efforts. It's not new that we're doing it, but we increased our efforts on that.
Thank you. And I know just we issued a news release yesterday, and I believe there was one leak last week, which saved about 30,000 liters of water per day.
Yeah.
And then we got 5 shut-off notices that have gone out this week, and cumulatively, I think about 41,000 liters or something along those lines. So I know staff are actioning a lot of that. We got Hannah, who's asking, and I know this is a question which has come up before, Remco, a couple of times. How can you justify that food producers were asked to stop using water at stage 4 before you ask some of the non-essential water users to stop at the state of local emergency? And then we're speaking about, the essentiality of food, or at least more essential than alcohol. Could we look at changing this classification?
I think those are great questions, and we will definitely take that feedback and see how we can do it, but or what we can do about it. But ultimately, we are what is regulated and not what is restricted under stage 4 is set by our bylaws. So it's ultimately the SRD board that provides that direction on what is allowed under a certain use or in certain stages or not. So I think there's definitely learnings from the unprecedented situation we're currently in now that we will have to reconsider and see if there's any improvements that we can recommend to the board for implementation next year.
Perfect, thank you. Jacqueline then is chatting about the channel up at Chapman Lake. And Jacqueline's question is, I know this won't help now, but is there a chance of leveraging this dire situation to convince the province to declassify the park as Class A park to allow us to deepen the channel and raise the dam in the future?
So as most of you know, in 2019, so we had a project on books and we were working towards lowering the outlet channel so we can get more water out of the lakes. Late summer, ultimately early 2019, Minister Heyman, the responsible minister for BC Parks, declined, indicated that he would not support that any longer. So at the time, we were already working on groundwater development, so we proceeded with that. But one of the last actions from our previous board, late October, was to write a letter to the Premier, as well as to the Minister Heyman, to reconsider any options that we can have options to get more water out of those lakes, both Edwards Lake and Siphon Lake. But I have to say, the siphon system that we currently have in place at Chapman is allowing us to draw the exact same amount of water from the lake as was originally intended by lowering the outlet level. It's both 1 million cubic meters. So we were able to receive the same amount of water that would otherwise have been become available by doing the outlet lowering project. So from that perspective, from our perspective, we really would hope to receive the approval from the ministry to keep that siphon in for the foreseeable future, because that system works and it's technically way more efficient and financially as well than deepening the outlet channel for a price anywhere between $6 and $9 million.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. So again, if anybody has any more questions, we've got a couple more here in the queue that I'll get through, and you can ask them on the bottom of the screen there using the Q&A tab and also using chat, or you can raise your hand and we can promote you into the meeting here to ask it yourself. And again, we do have Colin and Yarrow here on the call as well from Scredo. So if you do have any business related questions, Remco, you seem to be on the hotspot, and unless Colin or Yarrow want to take a run at one or two of the water related questions, but yeah, you go ahead, Colin. I see you have your hand up there.
Yeah, and I guess so this has been a fantastic way for you to share information. I think it brings us all onto the same page. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a wonderfully creative business community here. And so now that you've given us a sort of state of the game and where we're at with reasonable qualifications about we don't know what's coming next, what are the opportunities for the business community to get together with you and start planning for those eventualities and start saying, here's how we might create a shared operating plan, some businesses on certain days, others I'm making up examples at this point, but how do we start to get proactive about thinking what we'll do as opposed to just getting the information and then arguably all of a sudden getting a notice about a next order? And so have you thought about how you'd like to do that with us?
I thought about it for 5 seconds, and that was about my mental capacity over the last several days to actually put time on this. But yes, I would like to. I think there is definitely it's now the time to have those conversations and see how we can be creative and how we can have the conversation. So I think there's definitely an opportunity, Colin, to start working together between Scredo and some of our staff and people in the community, the business community, to come up with a plan how we can avoid mandatory measures, because I think that's all. Everything that the community can do itself is, I think, preferred over using any orders or whatever, and that's my strongest. So if there is appetite within the business community to work with us, I can make sure that staff is available to work with those people and see what we can do. So I think let's continue the conversation.
Great, thank you.
And I think just to expand maybe a little bit, Remco, to give people a sense of just how busy it's been, you know, we've been in this EOC since, in stage 4 since August, and then through September and October. And it's literally maybe the last week or two where we've had a bit more capacity available to really start kind of looking, being more, I guess, forward facing and kind of really looking ahead into the winter months. So I think, you know, Colin, Yarrow, any further communication that we have with the business community around that, we'd love to again utilize the Scredo channels, which helped us put this together here today. So for anybody on the call, you know, I'd maybe look for something to come through the SRD and Scredo here. Once we've had an opportunity to kind of take all the feedback that we received today and put together a bit of a plan here. So Remco, we got a couple more questions here. One asking about the you know, what we're doing to address, what the SRD is doing to address the ongoing need for water and meeting the demand rather than trying to keep up.
So as indicated, so in terms of long-term water supply, because I think that's what we're looking at here is like I indicated before that our Church Road well field is expected to become fully online, which would provide us with a significant amount of additional water in January. So that water source, we've been working on it for several years, will be available next year summer to provide additional flow to the community. At the same time, we're developing another well field. When I talk about a well field, in this case, it's in both cases, it's a combination of 3 wells, 1 existing well and 2 new wells. We're currently developing a new well field in Langdale. If you drive towards the terminal and you have to stop before the booth, look left, you see a small building next to the overflow parking lot. That is our current well building, and next to it there are some fence. There's a fence-off area, and there are 2 new wells drilled recently. And so that well field will ultimately be connected to our system and then to the Chapman system, and it will provide us with a lot of additional water. It can take, I think, at least 2 years before we have all the infrastructure in place, because it would require water mains to be installed between the Langdale terminal and more or less the area in proximity of Persephone, Updale. So it would require some major infrastructure improvements. But that is a project that is underway, and I hope it will be completed as soon as we can. And we're asking provincial support to fast track any authorizations for that as well. I also talked about Great Creek, that we don't have sufficient treatment at that site to fully utilize that site, also in the winter months. So we're also exploring options to do that. And if it all goes well, all these sources can be available within the next 3 to 4 years. But we don't stop there. We're already planning for what are the water sources that we need to put online in 5 or 10 years from now, 15 years from now, because I think there are 2 drivers here. So climate change is not stopping. I think the current situation we're in is only proving that climate change will throw more unexpected consequences at us, as well as our community is not declining in size. It will continue to grow. So we're planning also for the long future.
Thanks, Remco. And for anybody who wants a little bit more information about the ongoing projects that we have and future projects as well, I'll put a link into the chat there on our engagement platform at letstalk.scrd.ca/water. And you can go in, you can ask questions about the projects themselves and get a sense of where we're at with them. And as well on that page, you can learn more about the water strategy, which was conducted all through this year, which involved quite extensive engagement into the community around the future water supply within on the Sunshine Coast. Remco, we have a question here from an anonymous attendee. They're asking if we're taking a look at our own infrastructure and our own water mains, our own infrastructure system leaks. Are they being investigated, and if so, have they been addressed?
Perfect question. So yes, we definitely are looking at our own infrastructure. In the Chapman water system, That's the focus of the current water restrictions. Most of the water mains are relatively new. They've been replaced in the last several decades, and they're not that prone to failure. If there are leaks, we are usually able to identify them and to find them and to fix them pretty quickly. So we're able to monitor that. And just last weekend, there were 2 water main breaks in the Pender area, and they were identified on Saturday. And Saturday night, they were addressed by our crews. So if we have leaks in our system, we notice them, we are able to monitor them and are fixing them as soon as possible.
Great stuff. Thanks, Remco. Carolyn, I see that you have your hand up there, so I'm just going to promote you into the meeting here. So Carolyn Minchin, if you want to unmute there, you can go ahead and ask a question. Following Carolyn, we got our Area E Director, I believe, Donna McMahon.
Thanks, Ian. It's actually my husband, Jeff White, who's going to ask the question. It's his question. So
yeah, no worries, Carolyn. Yeah, go ahead there, Jeff. We're all listening.
Okay, thank you. Remco, you mentioned a little earlier about hoping to finalize a contractor for the metering in Sechelt, for the individual homeowners metering, and you're hoping to get that contractor in place in the next month and then hopefully install the meters early next year. Now, as I recall, the funding for the metering was approved with an AAP at least 2 years ago. Why has it taken so long to get this put into place? The metering was touted at the time as saving 20 to 30% of the water being lost.
Thank you for the question. So the meter, we received the meter approval in terms of the funding approval from the community last summer in 2021. And the final approval was received. And at the time, we were just extremely short of staff. And we still are down 4 staff in 4 of our engineering staff, 4 of the 8, we don't have them. There are vacancies and that are hard to fill positions. And that's really impacting our ability to move forward with a project like this. This summer, we were able to attract a new manager, an additional manager. And the first thing I asked him to do is metering, work on this. We need to get going on this. So it is a priority for us, and we're short-staffed and are still struggling to attract, to expand our engineering staffing so that we can actually manage these kind of projects in a responsible way. And when I say managing in a responsible way, is like getting a contract in place for a project of this nature is at least $7 million. We also need to do it right. And I hope you appreciate that if we do it right from the get-go and get the contract in place, get a good contract in place, it at least will prevent any cost overruns on the end that were unavoidable. So we want to keep the cost down, so we need to do our due diligence now. But we're getting close, and as Aidan indicated earlier, some of the resources that we're working on getting that those tender documents together are redeployed to work on the immediate water supply situation. So we're doing what we can with the resources we have. I think that's the business mentality that everybody has.
Okay, thanks, Remco.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question, folks. I'm just going to promote Director Donna McMahon in here. Director McMahon, you're in there. If you want to unmute there, feel free.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hear you perfect, yeah.
Yeah, some of my constituents have been asking why medical marijuana producers are exempted from, whereas the commercial marijuana producers were affected by the order.
Thanks for the question, Director. The principle behind is that it's medical versus non-medical. It's recreational. If they are producing for the recreational market, we consider them to be less essential, providing a less essential benefit to the community than if it's for medical. So that's really That's really the only difference. It doesn't mean that if you're a medical producer, you should not see if there are ways for you to reduce your own water use. And the reason why cannabis is included is it's the same as that. Stage 4 restrictions are currently still in place for farmers. So if we don't want to have them in place, we don't want to be in a situation where we need to curtail farmers. But we're currently in a situation that we have to use the water only primarily to make sure that we have enough water for the residents, that we have enough water for firefighting, and that we have enough water for ultimately our hospital. Those are the three objectives that we're currently focusing on, and that means that some uses, less critical uses, are currently being curtailed, including any other than non-medical cannabis production.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the question. Thank you very much. Radio, just in relation to the Sunshine Coast Arena, how much water will be utilized to fill the rink? And then I know we have another value as well for the ongoing maintenance, Remco, so maybe we can expand on that a little bit.
So it's about 80,000 liters that is required to actually install the ice. And but once the ice is installed, it needs to be maintained. And the cooling machines, the plant itself also uses a lot of water, just as part of their as part of the cooling process. So the initial installation will be about 80,000 liters, and the ongoing use will be up to 110,000 liters a week.
And just, I guess, if we're trying to put that into terms, you know, we're asking right now for residential use to be below 400 liters a day. So it's about to fill in about 200 households of water. So hopefully that gives it a little bit more context. We got a question here just in relation to businesses, and it's saying if we have to reduce water demand again, is it possible to ask a different type of business to shut down their non-essential use of water instead of coming back to those who've already taken a turn? And would be great if restrictions could shift so we all have a chance to recover and not always be in the first group to get hit when restrictions elevate. It's a good question.
I think that's a great question. I think that's in response to a question from Colin. We were talking about getting together with some SGD staff and some representative from the business community to talk about how best to move forward with restrictions if they were need to be put in place again. And I think this is definitely a question that we should include there.
Great stuff. Thanks, Remco. We got another question here just in relation to the Sunshine Coast Arena. Maybe I can help answer the start of it here. They're asking, could we not use water from the Water Resource Centre, which currently goes into the ocean, to fill the ice arena? And my understanding, Remco, is that there's a tournament that's due to take place at the Sunshine Coast Arena, and essentially utilising that water would not have allowed us to have ice in place quickly enough in order for that tournament to take place. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but essentially that's the rationale behind utilising water from the Chapman water system and then potentially water from alternate sources then to maintain the ice.
Yeah, that's correct. The board decided that Chapman water needed to be used for the installation because otherwise the ice floor wouldn't have been ready for the tournament next weekend. The weekend after next. Yeah.
Anonymous attendee has a question here. Once all the channels, I presume that's maybe speaking to the various water sources and water supply projects that we're looking at. Once they're all in working order, will we end up in the same circumstances again? I'm thinking that's probably a difficult one to predict with what climate change has shown us over the last couple of months here.
I think, let's put it that way. Our ultimate intent is currently the objective is that we are increasing our water supply so that we don't have to go past stage 2 water conservation stages. That is our target. So that's what we're aiming for, is that if there's a dry situation, we might hit stage 2, but that's it. And so our target is to at least get there in 2025. And we hope to be able to maintain it afterwards.
Perfect. Thank you. I've got a couple more questions in the Q&A here, but I do see that Area E Director Donna McMahon has her hand up again. So I'm just going to promote you through to the meeting here, Director McMahon. So feel free to unmute there and ask your question. There could be an old hand that was left up. I'm not too sure.
I think it's an old hand.
An old hand. Okay. So let me see. So any thoughts on desalination of ocean water for use in golf courses, ice rinks, and other businesses that don't need drinking water? I know, for a point of clarification, I believe golf courses are on their own water sources, right, Remco? On the most part, well, you go ahead and expand out.
Yeah, most golf courses on the coast are using only potable water in their restaurants and facilities, and are not using SCRD or Chapman water for the irrigation purposes. They have their own water sources for that.
And then just the desalination point then, and whether or not that's something that we've looked at.
So desalination is long term. It is a option. It's a very, very expensive option, and there are currently no desalination systems that can provide the amount of water that we need for the community. So as you indicate, if there is a specific business or a specific use, it might be that those facilities that might be an option. It will be very cost effective, very costly in terms of installation, but they also use a lot of electricity, so they're not cheap in operations as well. So I think here on the coast, we still have additional other water sources that would be available as well, because wells can be drilled in some areas. Some areas might be a little bit more tricky. So if there is additional, if somebody wants to use water other than potable water, I think there are ways to do it other than desalination.
Great stuff. Thank you. Therese is asking, is there any future development to use groundwater for non-potable use?
I think there's a lot of businesses, farms, and that have been drilling wells on their property. We've done it as well at Cliff Coker. We looked at, can we use groundwater for irrigation of sports fields? I think the answer is yes, you can. You can drill your own well, but there's a but. You have to get a license. Well, after you drilled your well, you have to get a license from the Ministry of Forest before you start using it. If you don't, then you run the risk that A, you're running out of you're in non-compliance with the Act, the Water Sustainability Act, and B, you're actually could result that your well is actually drawing from an aquifer that's, for example, connected to the Chapman Creek. So there are wells where the operations of those wells are actually impacting the amount of water in Chapman Creek. So yes, you have your own water source, but you're still actually drawing from the same creek as the community is drawing from. So in order to avoid that, you need to get your water license applied for at the province, get it issued, and then you can operate your well. And then you have the confirmation that your well is not impacting other wells or the community water supply indirectly.
Perfect. Thank you. 6 more questions here in the Q&A. So we've got somebody asking, I know that the issue of development comes up quite often, Remco, and they're asking if any big new developments can be postponed or cancelled, and then they clarify that just another comment that they're not speaking about, affordable housing here. I guess this would be looking at other developments.
So the last several years, so if you compare the last 10 years, our community has grown a lot. last 5 years, I think based on latest census data, it was 7.5% over the last 5 years. So, however, our community demand in terms of water has decreased more than the increase in community. So actually our overall usage in the community has come down the last 10 years due to the fact that water meters were installed in the rural areas. People are conserving water more, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately the impact of growth on our overall water supply is limited. And ultimately, I think it is a political decision if they want to go there or not. But in terms of the effectiveness, as we're just indicating, some of the leaks are at the same size as 100 houses. So fixing one large leak is equivalent to one very large subdivision. So if that's the context, then I think fixing leaks and addressing those kind of issues would allow growth to continue without impacting the water supply.
Thank you. Got a question here about whether or not the business community will receive a warning prior to the issuance of any orders under the state of local emergency.
As indicated before, orders on the state of a local emergency are only being issued as a last resort, and they will be based on what's actually happening on recent developments on creek flows, et cetera, et cetera. So usually they are really immediate decisions. And I think these kind of conversations that we're having right now, and I think further conversations with the business community like this could result in increased awareness amongst the business community about what could happen next. And if we can avoid an order because there is already voluntary measures being taken, let's do it. I'm all in. I don't want to recommend the issuance of orders because I hope that we can work it out ourselves. So in terms of warnings, if we can provide a warning, we'll do so, but I hope we can avoid even going there.
And just for everyone's information, we when we issue an order, we do update it on our social media page. It's also available at scrd.ca/alerts, and on our homepage too. So I put a couple of those links into the chat earlier, and I'll put them in again here shortly. Remco, we got 4 questions in the Q&A, but I'm just going to ask one because we haven't really touched on it yet, and I do see that we have representatives here from the Pender Harbour Chamber of Commerce. Now, obviously, our focus here is on the Chapman water system, but maybe just if you're okay, just to give us a quick sense of other water systems within the regional district, North, South, Pender, and how they're faring right now, and then I'll jump back into the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. So all the other water systems that we are in good shape. So the water systems in Egmont, Cove Quay, North Pender, and South Pender are all doing very good. South Pender was for an extended period of time in stage 2 water restriction because our McNeil Lake, the levels in McNeil Lake were dropping significantly, and it was because of and there was a high demand in the community. That's now the lake has recharged there, so it's overflowing again. Eastbourne water system on Keats Island was for a very long time on stage 4, which is not uncommon for them because they rely on an aquifer that is and it's really sandy soil, so the aquifer really drops there during the summer months regularly over the last 10 years, so they're used to that. But since last week, also those water levels, due to the rain, recharge again, so they're in a good shape currently as well. So it's primarily the Chapman system that's currently at risk, primarily because we rely on an alpine system that freezes over and snows.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Remco. Anonymous attendee here, I'm not sure if we have this data at hand or not, but they're asking what uses more drinking water, the hospital or the Seashell Water Resource Center. I'm not too sure if we have that.
Hold on. Let's see if I can give you that information in a very short turnaround time. I think think it is still I think it's one or the other. They're competing, definitely. Yeah, I won't be able to confirm that as we speak.
Okay.
No, I don't have the data in front of me.
If we get that answer before the end, then for sure we'll provide it to you. We got Tony. This is another one coming your way here, Remco.
Yep.
They're asking how the eventual pumping of Langdale water to the Chapman system users affect those of us currently on Langdale water.
Not. That's the answer.
It
It won't affect. Currently, the Langdale well has the Langdale well itself has access capacity. We can draw way more water from it without impacting without impacting the aquifer, and we will never use the additional wells to the extent that it could in any way impact the Langdale system. So there will be no change to the users. They will receive the same water as they're receiving now. Quality will stay the same. It won't have any impact to the users. The only difference might be is because it will be amalgamated with the Chapman system, that if there are water restrictions in place for the Chapman system, they would apply as well for the Langdale system, and that's currently not the place. And the reason for the connection is to reduce the likelihood that we even have to go there. So I think ultimately I hope that we will never have to, that there will be no impact to the Langdale users.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. We got two more questions here that I'm going to go through, and then if we've no other questions at that point, I may just fire it over to Colin and Yarrow and then Remco just for some closing remarks. So I'll just go through these two questions here first. So asking if it's realistic to view each water source as belonging to various owners, are we not actually all on the same water table?
There are several aquifers, so groundwater bodies on the coast. There's one in the area of Elphinstone, Gibson, Soames, Granthams. That's a big one. And there's a separate one on Langdale, which is unconnected. And then there is the larger aquifer under Chapman and part of Sechelt. So the Wilson Creek area and the DOS, more the downtown area of Sechelt. That's more the Chapman watershed. So as I just indicated, all these systems there within a watershed are connected to each other. So if you drill a well in Elphinstone, in Upper Elphinstone, let's say in Reed Road, you're most likely tapping into the same aquifer as the town of Gibson is using. So that's why as part of the water licensing process, those things are connected to each other and are considered in general. So in a more comprehensive way to ensure that there's no adverse effects on other users and other wells, existing wells, as well as that the aquifers are not overstretched, which could result in unsustainable withdrawal from those aquifers and might have impacts in 10, 20 years from now.
Robert, I'm just going to jump ahead to a quick addition to a question which you just answered a little bit ago, Remco. So the question that we had earlier was, it was asking about Langdale. So it was how will the eventual pumping of Langdale water to Chapman system users affect those who's currently on Langdale water? And then we're looking somebody's asking whether or not the answer she provided for the effect on Langdale users is the same for Grantham's.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
It's the same.
Okay. We got a question here around development. Going forward, will any new development projects be subject to having water capture systems in place? So we have any resident, any house can have two ways of capturing water. One is rainwater harvesting. Just collect rainwater from the gutter and use it, for example, outside for irrigation. At my house, we're not using none other use, no tap water use outside of the house. And I think that's an easy way to, and in the winter, usually we get enough rain to fill up a barrel so you can use it in summer. The other system is gray water harvesting. So that's the water from let's say your shower, you can reuse it
to flush your toilet with. That system is currently not required yet to be installed in all developments. I know there has been talk about, but none of the local authorities on the coast currently have that as a requirement yet. And I know there is also some questions in terms of what is allowed on the building codes, etc. So I don't know the exact details, but I know that there is some regulatory hurdles to jump through. And I know that the District of Sechelt is trying to break through those hurdles at the moment.
Great stuff. Thank you. We got one more question here. So this will be we got a couple more. Great. Carolyn's asking about the Dusty Road well and whether or not it has a lot of supply potential. So maybe you can expand on that a little bit, Remco. Good
question. Thank you. So the Dusty Road well was one of the test wells we drilled in 2018. And for those of you who want to know where the well is, if you drive up to the landfill Dusty Road, on the left side, there is a public works yard from District of Sechelt, and Dusty Road is located in the shoulder of the road there. The board at the time decided to not proceed with that well because of the impacts of the adjacent mine site and the expansion plans for the mine upslope of that well. So ultimately, if you look at the mine long-term plan, all the land upstream is slated to be mined as well. And as a result, the aquifer will change could be impacted significantly, which will make this well definitely not a long-term, cost-efficient and effective investment to further develop, as well as that there is a minor risk that there is, of course, any environmental incident in a mine, which is still an industrial activity that could impact the water quality in the aquifers. I also indicated earlier that a lot of the area we're talking about is actually is connected to the aquifer that's underneath Chapman Lake or Chapman Creek. So it could actually be that if you drill if you divert a lot of water from Dusty Well, you're actually drawing water underneath Chapman Creek. So while you're thinking you have high productivity in terms of your well, you're actually reducing the amount of flow in Chapman Creek, and ultimately, from a community water supply perspective, you're not gaining anything because you're just taking it from a different location.
Okay, thank you, Remco. Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just as a clarification, you can do some myth busting for me on that one around Dusty Road as well. Is that land not also sort of part of the foundation agreement and therefore subject to greater and a more appropriate say from our host nation?
Yeah, there is all the mine, all the land around it is transferred to private land to the Sechelt Nation. So we have been in contact with them about their long-term plans for that land, and so further engagement with the nation is definitely should be the first step if there is ever actually the desire to expand it, to explore this well further. And to date, the nation has been very reluctant to support the development of that Dusty Road well because of that, because the possible connection with Chapman Creek, as well as the interconnection between that well and the long-term viability of the well given their mine plans.
That answered okay for you, Colin?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So Theresa is asking, will the SRD provide education to the public about water capture at home? As the person who deals with that side of the shop, yes, we will. Thank you. I just took a quick scan. I think we can do a little bit more on that. Also, just for your awareness, we do run a rainwater harvesting rebate program. There's still money in the pot there to pull from for that program. So I'm just going to stick the link into the chat on that. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to what I said there, Remco, related to that.
I'm good.
Okay,
You
and
did a good job.
and Colin, I see you got your hand up there. Feel free to chat away.
A question about the flexibility in that rainwater program. Certainly we hear a lot from others that the threshold to qualify for that program requires a certain amount of disposable income that maybe is tough in times of rising costs all across the board. Or is there flexibility to bring in some of the smaller tote style home implementations and get some rebates for those?
I think it's good. I think it's a good point. I think from what we are learning, what we currently have as eligible cisterns are indeed large size ones, so you can actually make a substantial difference. But the smaller, really the small rainwater barrels, you won't be able to provide a lot of water, to capture a lot of water so that you can roll through an extended stage 4. But I think it's something that we will revisit as well over when we reevaluate where we are right now and how to move forward.
Well, just thinking about the sort of principle of reuse and recycling IBC totes and being able to pick up some home DIY materials from our great local building stores. I think there are options for people to collect meaningful amounts of water.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Colin. So we got no more questions here being asked. Thank you to everyone who's asked a question so far. We've had some great feedback, and I know for sure there's a lot of takeaways that we've taken so far. Just going to give another minute or two for folks to ask a question if they haven't, but I was maybe just going to throw it over to you, Colin, and to Yara to see if you've anything to kind of close off the session. And now if we've got no more questions, I'll throw it to you, Remco, and then we'll finish up and leave everyone go about their day.
Yeah, so from Escrito's side, the commitments that we'll make coming out of the call today are to certainly, again, check back in with our partners of the province around some of those supports that could be modified to better assist businesses who have been impacted by orders and who may be impacted by future orders. Also to find some time with your teams at the SCRD to create a forum for doing some of that creative problem solving, not just around businesses and shutting off, but perhaps also around some of what I suspect is the subjective area around assessing the socioeconomic impact of what gets shut off and what doesn't. There was some discussion today of recreation versus non-recreation. There's indoor, there's outdoor, and we see how a system can also be pushed back by local interest groups doing good community organizing and advocacy. And so if there is wiggle room in there, how does a business community that I think to a business to date has shown up recognizing that they are reliant upon the communities in which they do business, and so we're understanding of why orders were put in place, but also want to be advocating on their own behalf for the incredible socioeconomic impacts that they do positively contribute to community. And so we'll follow up with you for setting up some time to pursue both of those avenues of discussion.
Perfect. Thank you. Yara, I see you've unmuted there.
I just wanted to say if anybody has any questions or wants to access any of those supports, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I will put my email address in the chat, and I'm happy to work with any local businesses to try to find supports for you.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I'll fire it over to you, Remco, and then I can close it off just by recapping some of the links that we've shared so far. So
yeah, I'm really pleased with the fact that I was able to have this conversation and that we was able to provide the clarity that I hope was useful. At least there was a lot of questions, and I'm really pleased that we can have this opportunity here, and I'm looking forward to working for further, and that there's more ongoing communication about this with the business community and the SCRD. I think this is a first step of more to come.
thanks so much, Remco. So just to recap a couple of the links that we shared so far. So if you're looking for any updates around the state of local emergency, the best way to find that is at www.scrd.ca/alerts. We post any news releases pertaining to this state of local emergency. Also, any orders that have been issued as well are available there to read. I just want to give a shout out to our local media who've been incredible at helping us, spread the word out there about these orders and what's been going on with our current situation here within the region. As well as that, this session, once we close it off here, will be available on the SCRD's YouTube channel. So, please feel free to share it around. We hope that there was, a lot of value in this, in the types of questions that were being asked and the answers that were provided. And then finally, we did have a lot of discussion around, what the SCRD is doing about water sourcing and water supply. Again, we do have an engagement website. It's at letstalk.scrd.ca/water. And on there, you can read all about the projects that Remco's referred to, and you can ask questions about them as well. And those questions are coming directly through to staff who are involved in those projects themselves and can hopefully shed some further light on what's going on. So with that, I think we'll close off the session. As Remco said, we're keen to keep the conversation going. So so more to come from all of us. So thank you for your time, Colin. Thank you for your time, Yarrow. And Remco, I know you're probably going into about 10 meetings now, so I really appreciate your time as well. So thank you very much.